Let's take a trip to Estes, Colorado. You are in a peaceful, forested mountain surrounded by fresh mountain air and nature, and your bags are packed to stay at a foreboding yet captivating hotel that dominates the scenery. You have been told that it is a great space to go and relax and let your creative energy flow, so you decide to book a night. Stepping inside, you are greeted by a world frozen in time. The interior exudes an old-world charm with its grand corridors and opulent furnishings. The halls are adorned with timeless artwork and intricate decor, each piece hinting at the storied past of the hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow, illuminating the exquisite craftsmanship that permeates every inch of the space. You curiously watch gaggles of guests rushing to the exit of the hotel before it's shut down for the winter season. Fortunately for you, the staff agrees to let you experience the beauty of the hotel all alone for just one night. As the sun dips below the horizon, an unsettling energy floods the hotel. A cloak of darkness descended over the once welcoming halls. A chilling breeze wafts through the empty corridors, whispering secrets of forgotten tales. Each footstep echoes through the desolate expanse, unnerving you with its haunting resonance. The oppressive atmosphere prickles at your skin, and you sense unseen eyes fixed upon your every move. Dinner in the grand courtroom is accompanied by an otherworldly, pre-recorded orchestra that fills the otherwise empty air with spectral melodies, their strains reaching deep into the core of your being. In the face of mounting apprehension, you yearn for the calm within the confines of your sanctuary, room 217, as its four steadfast walls hold the promise of respite from the encroaching sense of foreboding. Except you're wrong. Nightmarish visions invade your sleep, tormenting your rest with their relentless intensity. Awakened in a cold sweat, you find solace eluding you. Fear tightens its grip, squeezing your heart as you realize you're caught within the clutches of the infamous Stanley Hotel. Hello all, and welcome to Creeps and Creeps. I'm your host, Cece Delaney, and today we're going to be discussing the terrifying past and maybe ghosts of the Stanley Hotel. But first, if you're new here, welcome. I hope that by the end of this episode, you like this content enough to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you stream your podcasts and are compelled to leave a like or a review. I'm trying to build a communicative, creepy crew. That always gets me around these parts. So any questions, comments, concerns, they're all welcome and encouraged in the comment section on YouTube or the related Instagram post at Creeps and Creeps Podcast. Now let's get this thing started. In 1903, Freeland Oscar Stanley, who just so happened to be the inventor of the steam-powered car, contracted consumption, aka tuberculosis, or as I'm going to refer to it for the rest of this episode, TB, because words are hard, but letters are not. At the same time, TB was incredibly misunderstood and pretty much a death sentence if you were to contract it. Due to the abhorrent lack of medical comprehension, the prevailing medical advice for treating tuberculosis was to seek fresh, dry air, abundant sunlight, and to eat a nourishing diet. Based on this medical advice, Freeland packed up his wife Flora and moved them to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, where it was widely believed to be one of the healthiest, purest areas to live during the TB outbreak. They arrived in Denver in March and, based upon recommendations of the locals, traveled about an hour up north and settled in Estes Park, Colorado for the duration of the summer, which is now where, the Rocky Mountain National Park is. Kind of shockingly, Stanley's health actually did see a remarkable improvement over the course of the season, and after having fully recuperated by 1907, Stanley found himself unsatisfied with the basic housing, leisurely activities, and laid-back social environment of their recently adopted summer residence, and he felt that he owed the area of Estes his life for recuperating him in such a profound way. All in all, things were pretty boring during the healing process, and Stanley was not about that life. Because he had money falling out of his butt and a newfound sense of purpose, Stanley embarked on a mission to transform Estes Park into a flourishing resort town. Construction commenced in 1907 on the Stanley Hotel, and the doors were opened 2 short years later to the public on July 4th, 1909. The hotel boasted the title of a luxury hotel, with 48 rooms just waiting to be booked. He intended on accommodating the semi-rich in Stanley's social circle, and to attract individuals that had contracted TB seeking the rejuvenating climate of the region. So at least they didn't have to suffer in a long and boring podunk town. Over time, the hotel expanded to 420 rooms, haha, blaze it, plus ballrooms, dining areas, and an underground cave system that we're going to get into later. And the hotel was credited for helping give the area enough attention to create Rocky Mountain National Park, and infamously inspired Stephen King's best-selling novel, The Shining. And it later served as the associated TV miniseries in 1997, but for whatever reason, not the movie The Shining. However, it was used for the Aspen, Colorado hotel scenes during the filming of the movie Dumb and Dumber and managed to traumatize poor Jim Carrey. Actually, let's pivot for a second and talk about the Stephen King era of the hotel. So at the time, he was living in Colorado and was in the middle of writing a book that was actually initially set at an amusement park. But he wasn't really loving the roller coaster tycoon vibe of it all. And in a twist of fate, some locals pointed him in the direction of the Stanley Hotel. So in 1974, he and his wife Tabitha headed an hour up north from their home and checked in with the intention to spend just one night. The hotel was at the cusp of winter closure, and most of the other guests were checking out as the Kings were checking in, which meant that the couple were the only residents for the night. Stephen took the time to wander the hotel after Tabitha went to bed and made his way down to the bar and had a conversation with a bartender named Grady. I'm gonna mention, I'm not really sure why it was important that Grady's name was mentioned, but so many sources took the time to name drop this man, so I'm sure I just missed something. Sorry, Grady. But he was apparently very important in this tale. After a little exploring, he made his way back to his room 217 and was completely inspired by the isolated setting, imposing stature, and unsettling emptiness of the hotel. He was fully sent over the edge to write when he was in the potty and saw the Clawfoot Club, and as any good creep does, thought to himself, quote, "What if somebody died here?" Unquote. His imagination, already running wild, clearly had some influence over his dream, and he was quoted as saying, quote, "I dreamed of my 3-year-old son running through the corridors, looking back over his shoulders, eyes wide, screaming. He was being chased by a fire hose. I woke up with a tremendous jerk, sweating all over, within an inch of falling out of bed. I got up, lit a cigarette, sat in the corner looking out of the window at the Rockies, and by the time the cigarette was done, I had the bones of The Shining firmly set in my mind." Unquote. Now, the most interesting thing that I find about this entire story is that prior to the Stephen King era, there really weren't many recordings of ghostly activities. Stuff like this always leads me to question if some of the activity is energetically created or like a power of suggestion situation, which was actually succinctly summarized by an author and paranormal investigator, Richard Estep, who said, quote, "Places get ghosts for different reasons, such as tragedy or bloodshed, but also people tend to haunt places where they were very happy during their lifetimes. I sense we're seeing people coming back because they deeply love this hotel." Unquote. That kind of comes up later when we talk about another entity who doesn't seem to have a relation to the hotel. So let's dive into the alleged hauntings, working our way from the bottom of the hotel, literally underneath, to the top. Starting at the caves. During the early days of the hotel, it was seen as quote-unquote unprofessional to be seen by guests, so employees navigated through the underground caves, making it understandable why this area is so often associated with paranormal activity. Skeptics dismiss these encounters as mere drafts caused by historical piping and ventilation systems, which is incredibly fair. However, beneath the hotel lies a notable abundance of limestone and quartz, and if you're a little hippie bitch like me, you know they have some properties to them, leading certain ghost hunters to theorize that these elements enhance the capture of energy within the premises. I like that theory. I'm going with that theory. Next up, we have the pet cemetery. Some of the owner's animals have been laid to rest there over the years, like Cassie, a friendly golden retriever who is said to still deliver newspapers and scratch at the doors to be let in from outside. Additionally, reports have emerged of sightings of Lord Dunraven's ghost, the previous owner of the land on which the Stanley Hotel stands. Curiously, a spectral figure with only a torso is said to manifest occasionally in the billiard room. Moving on, we have the concert hall. A ghost named Paul, who was known as a jack of all trades back in the day, can be heard telling workers and guests to quote-unquote get out at around 11 p.m. when the hotel closes. We love a responsible manager who just wants a good work-life balance. Or a good work-afterlife balance. Anywho, a construction worker reported that he felt Paul nudge him when he was sanding the floors, and tour groups on the Stanley Ghost Tour have reported that he flickered the flashlight for them when he asked. Mrs. Stanley also still takes up residency in the hotel. Guests report smelling rose scent when she is around, and she can be seen lingering around the piano or giving the guests a little tune. People have also reported that both of the Stanleys pop up all over the hotel, and most often they witness them guiding the lost kids back to their families. The concert hall is also frequented by another ghost named Lucy, whose background remains a mystery. Speculation suggests that she may have been a runaway or a homeless woman who was seeking solace within the hall's walls. And Lucy is known also to engage with ghost hunters and manipulate the lights of their flashlights. It should be noted, though, that despite extensive research, Stanley historians have yet to determine her exact connection to the hotel prior to her passing. So she could have just been one of those lingering ghosts who decided she really loved the place. Now we have the Grand Stairway, aka the rapid transit system for ghosts, and it is a highly active area. One guest reported taking pictures of this brilliant staircase only to find a strange womanly figure standing at the top in the photos, and they also see two girls dressed in white attire lingering over the stairs, reminiscent of the iconic twins from The Shining. I will note that, like in the Bell Witch episode, Ghost Adventures did go here, and like I don't want to put every single episode of Ghost Adventures in here because I'm not trying to get sued, so just trust me that it happened and go watch the episode. That one's actually pretty iconic. Speaking of icons, we have Icon Room 217. Alright, so the haunting tale of Room 217 began in 1911 when Elizabeth Wilson, a maid, entered the room carrying a candle. There are a lot of different stories as to how this took place. I'm just gonna go with the one that I first found, but trust me, there are like 13 different retellings of this freaking story. But Elizabeth enters the room carrying a candle. Great. Unbeknownst to her, an unforeseen gas leak had occurred, and as she went to light the room's lamps, an explosion erupted. The force of the blast propelled Wilson across the hotel, yet she miraculously survived, albeit with a few broken bones, and according to some resources, was put into a coma from the blast. Remarkably, this baddie recovered and resumed her duties at the hotel for several decades following the incident. She passed away in the 1950s, reportedly due to an illness, but since then, many believe that her spirit lingers in room 217. Guests who have stayed in the room recounted experiencing a multitude of peculiar phenomena, including the sound of a weeping woman, items moving, luggage unpacked, lights being turned on and off, and clothes having been mysteriously folded. Allegedly, Mrs. Wilson also has a more traditional side to her, and when unmarried guests decide to shack up together, some couples have reported feeling a cold force come between them. For whatever reason, most of the haunted rooms are at the end of our list, and that's because they're on the 4th floor, aka the children's hallway. When the hotel first opened, the 4th floor was actually a giant attic that accommodated the female employees, children, and nannies, but now that it's actually rooms for people to stay in, people will hear the sound of children running and laughing and giggling and engaging in playful activities. Specifically, rooms 401, 407, 418, and 428 are the most haunted, and guests also report a general sense of unease when they're simply walking down the hallway of the 4th floor. We'll start with room 401. So that one is thought to be haunted by an unfriendly male ghost. Women have claimed that they were inappropriately touched by an unknown presence while standing in the room's closet, and that same closet has been known to autonomously open and close. One man claims he witnessed his wedding ring inexplicably move from the bathroom counter and fall down the drain of the sink in the bathroom. In room 407, multiple guests have reported an odd experience of being tucked into bed by an invisible force, and others have felt someone sit on the foot of the bed only to find nothing but an indentation on the covers when they switched on the light. Room 418 seems to be fairly popular with children sightings specifically, and in one instance, a tour guide explained that she'd been hugged twice during tours by a child's ghost in the room, and said that another time when she entered room 418 with a tour group full of skeptics, they did their little history background of the room, and then when they went out into the hallway, but when they left the room and went into the hallway, the tour guide noticed that a couch that had previously been on the right side of the hall had somehow migrated to the left side, even though the group were only in there for a few minutes. When she asked the tour group if someone had slipped out and moved it, they all denied it. That's actually a pretty funny prank if someone had done that. The most notable room is room 428, where a quote-unquote friendly cowboy often sits on the corner of the bed waiting to greet you, or a little more horrifyingly will stand in the corner also waiting to greet you, which I prefer a lot less. Visitors have shared accounts of perceiving footsteps from the area above them and movement of furniture, but this is really unlikely considering the tour guides assert that such occurrences are physically impossible due to the incline of the roof. Over the last few months, there have been multiple renovations and upgrades made to the hotel, and they added 12 new specialty suites, balconies, and updated bathrooms. Sponsor me, Stanley Hotel. But I would just be really curious to see if that's kicked up any haunting into high gear, because you know how pissed off spirits get when you start messing around with their comfy cozy homes. Whether or not you believe in the entities that rule the Stanley Hotel, it is hard to deny the influence that the Stanley Hotel has had on pop culture and arguably the national forests in the surrounding area. But if you are a skeptic, take a trip and let me know what happened, because if nothing happened and it's simply just a really nice hotel and the concierge was incredible, and if you thought that this was interesting and have other haunted locations that you want me to look into, please leave it in the comments on YouTube or, again, the related Instagram post at Creeps and Creeps Podcast. I do read all of my comments, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the constructive, so please don't be afraid to voice your opinions. That being said, as always, don't be dickheads to each other in the comments. You can have your opinion, but so can Mike and Jessica and Janet, and we don't need everyone to share the same one, because imagine how boring the world would be. If you're streaming this as a podcast, please consider throwing a rating my way, with 5 stars obviously being the most helpful, and subscribing to the show. You can email me directly at creepsx2@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram at Creeps and Creeps Podcast if you want to suggest a case or just shoot the shit. If you're ever curious about my sources, they will be linked in the show notes, so you can sift through them if you want. I also have a blog post dedicated to each episode on creepsandcreeps.com that I will also link my sources in. Until next time, keep those little noggins on a swivel, and please try to stay safe.